Well, thousands of people are currently sitting in jail because they simply can't afford bail. Our next guest is a part of a project that will not only help low-income families in New York City, but across the United States when it comes to the issue of bail. Telling us now more about the Bail Project, we welcome the Bail Director, or I should say the Bail Project Director of Operations, Mr. Ezra Ritchin, who joins us here. And Ezra, good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, once again, we're back and talking, but I want to get people caught up on this. So your organization pretty much helps out and really bails out a lot of people who have been involved with misdemeanor crime. And talk to us about the project and what it means for those people who might be incarcerated in the services that you provide.
Yeah, so the Bail Project is a national organization that aims to bail out over 150,000 people across the country over the next 5 years, and it all started here in the Bronx. I think to understand what we're doing, I think you first have to understand what bail really is and what it's supposed to be, which are, in fact, two different things. So, legally and historically, bail is supposed to be an incentive to return to court. So the court says, give us $500, you do. At the end of your case, if you've made it to all your court dates, they refund that money. If you don't, they keep it. So it's kind of like having skin in the game. It's an incentive to return to court. The problem is that, in the South Bronx and in low-income communities of color across the country, that's not attainable. So in the Bronx, if you have bail set at $1,000 or less, 85% of people can't make that. 85% of people can't make that. Almost 2/3 of Americans don't have access to $500 in emergency savings. So what that means in the Bronx is that you have two options if you can't pay bail. You either go to Rikers Island, which is so notoriously violent that the mayor has vowed to shut it down, or you go to a facility that is known as the Boat. It's a military barge that was brought up from New Orleans, docked off of the East River in Hunts Point, and is wedged between the Department of Sanitation and a wholesale fish market. And you have 900 men, mostly men of color, being shackled and brought onto a boat in the East River because they cannot afford a bail payment. And those are your options if you can't pay bail in New York City. And mind you, these are all people who have yet to be convicted of a crime, who may never be convicted of a crime, and who are presumed innocent until proven guilty.
And so when we talked about this before, I found a very interesting statistic. When you talked about people who paid bail, they pretty much they come back to court.
Yeah, so it's funny. The idea of bail is supposed to be an incentive to return to court, like I said, but the people we bail out have no money of their own on the line. They have no quote-unquote skin in the game, and yet 95% of our clients come back to all of their court dates. And coming back to all of your court dates in New York City means you're in one of the most backlogged court systems in the country. So we just had a client whose case was dismissed after she came back to 19 court dates over 28 months. So coming back to court is not a walk in the park. It means that you will be here for months or even years coming back, and it exposes the myth of cash bail. Cash bail is supposed to be an incentive to return to court. If people are returning without that, with just phone reminders and text messages, then it begs the question, what is cash bail really doing? And I think our results demonstrate that. So for people who are held in bail until the end of their case, held in on bail, in jail, on Rikers or the Boat, over 90% will plead guilty in order to go home. For our clients who are home, who can work with their attorneys, who can return to their jobs, their families, their communities, go back to school oftentimes for our younger clients, over half of them have their cases dismissed entirely. So it kind of exposes what bail is not doing. It's not forcing people to come back to court. What it's really doing is forcing people to plead guilty.
And that's one of the things that I want to talk about, because you find a lot of people who say, listen, I simply can't make the bail. Let me just do this, hurry up and get this over with. And now you started a criminal record even further with now a conviction in many times simply because you just couldn't make bail.
Exactly. So the conviction will follow you into the job market, into the housing market, into attempts to get financial aid for schooling. And before that even happens, before you plead guilty, you have to sit in jail. And I like to say there's no such thing as just a short jail stay. So if you are in jail for a few days, a lot of things will unravel. So, people who are living in homeless shelters, if they don't sign in for 24, 48 hours, they and possibly their entire families will be living on the street. If you have a job and you don't call in, you'll likely lose that job. Half of all jail deaths, including suicide, happen in the first week. Over 40% of sexual victimization in jail happens in the first 3 days. So we are really tearing apart people's lives who can't pay bail.
So if somebody can't pay bail, how do you go about determining who's qualified and who's not?
Right. So the first step in New York State is the judge, and everywhere is the judge setting an amount that we are able to pay. In New York, that's $2,000 or less. And after that, we're looking for people who have roots in the community and who we're able to contact. Because what we found is that instead of sending someone to Rikers Island or the boat, if you send them a text message or a reminder, they will come to court. So if we have a way of getting in touch with that person, either through them, for our younger clients, through their family members, grandmother, social worker, whatever it is, if you have a way of getting in touch with someone, then they will come back to court and have that presumption of innocence restored.
How do you get the funds to be able to post bail on behalf of people?
We get the funds from a lot of private individuals who I think are angry at this system and want to do something direct about it, which we're doing, and I think also who recognize that, hey, if I had $500 bail set, I'd be able to make that in a second. There's an ATM across the street, and I have 100 people I could call who could come over and do that. So why are there thousands of people in New York City? 45,000 people in New York City go to jail every year for their inability to pay bail. Why are all these people being sent to jail for that? And why are almost all of them from low-income communities of color?
You're doing it here in the Bronx. It starts here in the borough of the Bronx,
Yeah.
and but you're going nationwide.
Yes, we are. So it really all did start here in the Bronx in 2007. Robin Steinberg and David Feiga, who were at the Bronx Defenders, decided to found the Bronx Freedom Fund and start this organization in 2007 to help clients who are held in on these low bails. And it started in the Bronx, and if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's true. So you said within 5 years, you're looking at 40 sites across the country, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's going to be good. As we talk a little bit more, I want to talk about the donations that you've received. You got individual investors. Do you still have other people coming on board and saying, listen, I see what you're doing, I want to help?
That's the hope, and I think we're also seeing lots of individuals from across the country who are coming in and saying, we want to do something about this, and it really is a direct means of engaging, because if you have an interest in ending mass incarceration and fighting back against mass incarceration, getting someone out who is stuck in for their race and poverty is a very clear and simple and clean-cut way of doing that.
What pushback have you gotten? Because I know you get a lot of pushback, talking about, listen, this is the wrong thing to do. You're setting criminals free. You're helping, but your response to that is what?
Well, I think our response is that these people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. That if you are presumed innocent until proven guilty, why are you sitting on a jail cell? Why are 4 out of 5 people on Rikers Island, why are they pre-trial? 4 out of 5 people on Rikers Island have not been convicted of a crime. 89% of Rikers Island is Black and Latino. But why have we created this system? And I think it really comes down to what our priorities are. We're spending $670 per person per night to house someone on Rikers Island. That is the nightly cost. Why aren't we investing those resources into communities, into education? We just are hearing about a tax plan that I know you discussed earlier in the show, and people are worried about ability to access health care, ability to access public schools for their kids, and yet we're spending almost $700 a night to keep people in jail who haven't been convicted of a crime.
We got families watching right now, and I'm sure they're watching right now. Somebody says, listen, I might have a loved one that's behind bars. What's the process for them if they're considering the Bail Project?
Yeah, so they can reach out to the Bail Project at hello@bailproject.org. That's the most direct way of reaching us, hello@bailproject.org. You can go directly to bailproject.org, and if you are specifically in New York City, you can go to thebronxfreedomfund.org.
And if you're outside New York City?
bailproject.org.
There you go. All right, well, Ezra, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, and we'll continue to follow the Bail Project as they continue to do great work in the community.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Ezra Ritchin, our guest. Listen, we'll take a quick break. Got more show. We want you to stay with us. We'll return